The marble floors of the Velasquez mansion gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, reflecting a world of opulence that seemed almost unreal. Through these pristine hallways walked Marcos Silva, a man whose calloused hands told stories of struggle that the polished surfaces could never reveal. At 32 years old, he had been working as a janitor in this mansion for nearly 2 years, moving like a ghost through rooms filled with priceless art and furniture that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Marcos was fluent in 4 languages: Portuguese, his native tongue; English, which he had perfected through countless hours of study; Spanish, learned from his grandmother; and Arabic, acquired during his brief stint as a translator before financial hardship forced him into manual labor. Yet none of the mansion's inhabitants knew this. To them, he was simply the quiet man who emptied their trash cans and mopped their floors. The mansion belonged to Camila Velasquez, a 45-year-old business mogul whose empire spanned technology, real estate, and international trade. Her company, Velasquez Global Enterprises, had offices in 12 countries and employed over 50,000 people worldwide. She was known for her sharp intellect, ruthless business acumen, and an almost supernatural ability to read people. Yet somehow she had never truly noticed the janitor who cleaned her home every day. The other staff members treated Marcos with a mixture of indifference and subtle cruelty. Isabella, the head maid, would often assign him the most degrading tasks with a condescending smile. "Marcos, the guest bathroom upstairs needs attention again," she would say, knowing full well that the previous guest had deliberately made a mess. Roberto, the groundskeeper, would accidentally leave mud on freshly cleaned floors, forcing Marcos to redo his work. Even Patricia, the cook, would make snide comments about his worn-out clothes and quiet demeanor. But Marcos endured it all with dignity. He needed this job desperately. His younger sister, Sophia, was studying medicine at the university, and their mother required expensive medication for her heart condition. Every humiliation, every sleepless night, every aching muscle was worth it if it meant his family could have a better future. On this particular Tuesday morning, the mansion buzzed with unusual activity. Camilla was hosting an important business meeting with potential partners from the Middle East. The delegation included prominent businessmen from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan, all potential investors in her latest venture, a revolutionary sustainable energy project that could reshape the industry. Marcos went about his duties as usual, carefully avoiding the main conference room where the meeting was taking place. He knew better than to be seen during such important occasions. Isabella had made it clear that morning. "Stay out of sight today, Marcos. We can't have you disrupting serious business with your presence." As the morning progressed, the meeting moved from the conference room to a more casual setting in the mansion's grand living room. The delegates seemed impressed by the proposal, and Camilla was in her element, switching seamlessly between English and basic Arabic phrases she had learned for the occasion. Her pronunciation was decent, but it was clear that her vocabulary was limited. Marcos was cleaning the hallway adjacent to the living room when he overheard one of the delegates speaking in rapid Arabic to another. His expression grew concerned as he listened. The man was expressing serious doubts about the project's feasibility and was questioning whether Camilla truly understood the cultural and business nuances necessary for success in the Middle Eastern market. "She seems competent," the delegate was saying in Arabic, "but I fear she lacks the deeper understanding of our business practices. This project requires someone who truly comprehends our way of doing business, our values, our language. Without that, I'm not sure we can trust her with such a significant investment." His colleague nodded in agreement. "Perhaps we should reconsider. There are other companies with better cultural understanding who might be more suitable partners." Marcos felt a pang of concern. He had grown to respect Camilla, despite her apparent indifference to his existence. She was a brilliant businesswoman who treated her employees fairly, even if she didn't notice the janitor who kept her home spotless. The thought of her losing this opportunity due to a cultural misunderstanding troubled him deeply. Just as Marcos was wrestling with whether he should somehow intervene, his old battered cell phone rang. The ringtone, a simple melody that he had set years ago, echoed through the hallway. Panic seized him. He had forgotten to put it on silent mode. The sound carried into the living room, and he could hear the conversation pause. Looking at the caller ID, Marcos saw it was his friend Ahmed, a former colleague from his translating days who now worked for an international consulting firm. Without thinking, and perhaps driven by the stress of the situation, Marcos answered the call. "Ahlan wa sahlan, Ahmed. Kaif halak?" Hello and welcome, Ahmed. How are you? Marcos spoke in fluent Arabic, his voice carrying the confidence and natural accent that comes from years of study and practice. Ahmed's voice came through clearly, discussing a potential consulting opportunity that had just opened up. As they talked, Marcos found himself relaxing, speaking with the eloquence and intelligence that his janitorial role had long suppressed. He discussed regional business practices, cultural sensitivities, and market dynamics with the expertise of someone who had spent years studying Middle Eastern commerce. نعم، أفهم تماما. هذه السوق تحت تطور كبير ويحتاج إلى فهم عميق للثقافة المحلية. Yes, I understand completely. This market is undergoing major development and requires deep understanding of local culture. Unknown to Marcos, Camilla had quietly stepped into the hallway to investigate the source of the phone call. She expected to find a staff member taking an inappropriate personal call that she would need to address. Instead, she found herself listening to the most sophisticated Arabic conversation she had ever heard, spoken by the last person she would have expected. Camilla's knowledge of Arabic was functional but limited. However, she could understand enough to recognize that Marcos was discussing complex business concepts with remarkable fluency and insight. She heard him mention market penetration strategies, cultural adaptation methods, and regulatory frameworks, topics that directly related to her current meeting. The delegates in the living room had also fallen silent, straining to hear the conversation in the hallway. Their expressions gradually changed from curiosity to amazement as they listened to Marcos speak. His Arabic was not just fluent, it was eloquent, nuanced, and demonstrated a deep understanding of their business culture. La ya sadiki, yajib an nakun hadirin. هذا النوع من المشاريع يتطلب شركاء يفهمون التفاصيل الثقافية والتجارية. No, my friend, we must be careful. This type of project requires partners who understand the cultural and commercial details. As Marcos continued his conversation, completely unaware of his growing audience, he inadvertently began addressing many of the concerns the delegates had raised earlier. He spoke about the importance of building trust through cultural understanding, the necessity of long-term relationship building in Middle Eastern business, and the critical role that respect for tradition plays in modern Arab commerce. Camilla felt her heart racing. Here was the solution to the very problem that was threatening to derail her most important business deal, and it had been cleaning her floors for 2 years without her knowledge. When Marcos finally ended the call, he turned to find Camilla standing in the hallway, her expression unreadable. His blood ran cold. He was certain he was about to be fired for taking a personal call during work hours. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I forgot to silence my phone. It won't happen again, I promise. He stammered in English, his confident demeanor from the phone call evaporating instantly. Camilla studied him for a long moment, her sharp business mind racing through possibilities. Marcos, she said slowly, we need to talk. But first, I'd like you to meet some people. With a mixture of confusion and terror, Marcos followed Camilla into the living room where the Middle Eastern delegates were waiting. Isabella, who had been serving refreshments, nearly dropped her tray when she saw the janitor entering the sacred space where only the most important business was conducted. Gentlemen, Camilla announced, her voice carrying a hint of excitement that she rarely displayed, I'd like you to meet Marcos Silva. It seems we have been underestimating the resources available to us. The delegates rose from their seats, their earlier skepticism replaced by genuine curiosity. The eldest among them, a distinguished man named Abdullah al-Rashid, stepped forward and addressed Marcos directly in Arabic. Assalamu alaikum, ya Marcos. Ismi Abdullah. سمعناك تتحدث بالعربية بإتقان كبير. من أين تعلمت لغتنا? Peace be upon you, Marcos. My name is Abdullah. We heard you speaking Arabic with great proficiency. Where did you learn our language? Marcos, still reeling from the surreal situation, responded instinctively in Arabic. وعليكم السلام, يا أستاذ عبد الله. تعلمت العربية في الجامعة ومن خلال العمل مع شركة ترجمة. كنت مترجم قبل أن أصبح ما أنا عليه الآن. And peace be upon you, Mr. Abdullah. I learned Arabic at university and through working with a translation company. I was a translator before I became what I am now. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Marcos had experienced in years. The delegates peppered him with questions about his background, his understanding of their culture, and his insights into the business proposal they had been discussing. With each answer, Marcos felt himself coming alive again. the intelligent, educated man he had once been emerging from beneath the humble exterior of a janitor. Abdullah turned to his colleagues and spoke rapidly in Arabic, his excitement evident. This man understands our concerns perfectly. He speaks not just our language, but our business language. He comprehends the subtleties that are so often lost in translation. Another delegate, Hassan al-Mahmoud, nodded enthusiastically. His insights into market dynamics are remarkably sophisticated. Where has he been hiding all this knowledge? As the conversation continued, other staff members began to gather in the doorway, drawn by the unprecedented sight of the janitor, engaged in animated discussion with the mansion's most important guests. Isabella stood frozen, her mouth agape. Roberto peered over her shoulder, unable to believe what he was witnessing. Patricia abandoned her kitchen duties entirely, drawn by the sound of Marcos speaking with an eloquence none of them had imagined he possessed. Camilla watched it all with the calculating gaze of a master strategist. She could see the delegates' entire demeanor changing. Where there had been polite skepticism, there was now genuine enthusiasm. They were no longer questioning her company's cultural competence. They were excited about the possibilities that Marcos represented. "Marcos," Camilla interrupted gently. "These gentlemen were expressing some concerns about our project's cultural feasibility. Perhaps you could share your thoughts on how we might address their questions." What followed was perhaps the most important business presentation of Marcos's life, delivered not in a boardroom but in a luxury living room, not in a tailored suit but in his cleaning uniform. He outlined a comprehensive strategy for cultural integration that addressed every concern the delegates had raised, and several they hadn't yet considered. He spoke about the importance of Islamic business ethics in project development, the role of relationship building in Middle Eastern commerce, and the need for long-term commitment rather than quick profits. He discussed regulatory challenges, cultural sensitivities, and market entry strategies with the expertise of a seasoned international business consultant. The key, Marcos explained in Arabic, is not just to translate language, but to translate intention, values, and vision. Success in your markets requires more than good business sense. It requires respect, understanding, and genuine partnership. Abdullah al-Rashid exchanged glances with his colleagues before speaking. "Miss Velasquez, we came here today with significant reservations about your proposal. We are leaving with great excitement about the possibilities, but only if Mr. Marcos here is involved in the project at the highest level." The meeting that was supposed to end in disappointment instead concluded with handshakes, preliminary agreements, and invitations for further discussions. The delegates were so impressed that they extended their stay by 2 days to continue conversations with both Camila and Marcos. As they prepared to leave that afternoon, Abdullah pulled Camila aside. "Miss Velasquez, in 30 years of international business, I have rarely encountered someone with such a perfect combination of linguistic skill, cultural understanding, and business acumen. If you do not recognize the treasure you have in that young man, you are making the greatest mistake of your career." After the delegates departed, Camilla asked Marcos to join her in her private office. The space was a reflection of its owner, sophisticated, powerful, and intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while the walls were lined with awards, certificates, and photographs of Camilla with world leaders and business moguls. Marcos had never been in this room before. As a janitor, he had only been allowed to clean it when Camilla was away, and even then, under Isabella's strict supervision. Now he sat across from one of the most powerful women in the country, trying to process the day's surreal events. "Marcos," Camilla began, her voice softer than he had ever heard it, "I owe you an apology. For 2 years, you've been working in my home, and I never truly saw you. I never took the time to know who you are or what you're capable of. That was my failure, not yours." She paused, studying his face carefully. "But I'm seeing you now, and what I see is someone who could be invaluable to my company. I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Middle Eastern Operations, overseeing our expansion into Arab markets. The salary would be $200,000 annually, plus bonuses based on performance, full health insurance for you and your family, and a substantial budget for further education if you choose to pursue additional qualifications." Marcos felt the world spinning around him. 6 hours ago, he had been worried about losing his job for answering a phone call. Now he was being offered a position that would transform not just his life, but his family's future. I don't know what to say," he managed. "Say yes," Camilla smiled. "But first, Tell me your story. I want to understand how someone with your qualifications ended up cleaning floors instead of running boardrooms. Over the next hour, Marcos told Camilla about his journey. He spoke of his university education, his dreams of becoming an international business consultant, and how his father's death had forced him to abandon his career to support his family. He told her about his sister's medical school ambitions, his mother's health problems, and the crushing weight of financial responsibility that had led him to take whatever work he could find. I never stopped learning, he explained. Even while mopping floors, I would listen to business podcasts, read international news, study market reports. I kept my skills sharp because I hoped that someday, somehow, I might get another chance. Camilla listened intently, her respect for Marcos growing with each word. Here was a man who had sacrificed his dreams for his family's welfare, yet had never allowed circumstances to diminish his potential. She had built her empire by recognizing talent, and she was looking at perhaps the most underutilized talent she had ever encountered. Word of Marcos's transformation spread through the mansion like wildfire. The staff members who had treated him with disdain now found themselves grappling with a new reality. Isabella, who had delighted in assigning him the most humiliating tasks, suddenly realized that the man she had been ordering around was now her superior in the corporate hierarchy. Roberto, who had deliberately made Marcos's work more difficult, found himself face to face with someone who would soon be earning more in a month than he made in 2 years. Patricia, who had mocked his appearance and humble demeanor, discovered that the poor janitor she had ridiculed was now dining with millionaire business partners and discussing million-dollar deals. But Marcos, to his credit, showed no desire for revenge. When Camilla asked if he wanted any changes made to the household staff, he declined. "They treated me poorly because they saw me as beneath them," he said with remarkable wisdom. "But that was a reflection of their insecurity, not my worth. I won't become like them just because I now have the power to do so." This response only deepened Camilla's respect for her newest executive. She had seen many people corrupted by sudden success, but Marcos seemed to possess an inner strength that prevented him from being consumed by bitterness or arrogance. The transition wasn't without its challenges. Some of Camilla's existing executives were skeptical about promoting someone directly from janitorial work to such a high-level position. There were whispers about favoritism, concerns about his lack of formal business experience in recent years, and questions about whether he could handle the pressure of international negotiations. Camilla addressed these concerns head-on during the next board meeting. "Marcos Silva has something that none of our other executives possess," she announced to the room full of MBA graduates and seasoned professionals. "He has authenticity, humility, and a perspective that comes from understanding struggle. He's lived in both worlds, the world of education and ambition, and the world of survival and sacrifice. That combination makes him uniquely qualified to bridge cultural gaps and build genuine relationships with our international partners." To prove her point, she shared recordings of Marcos's conversations with the Middle Eastern delegates. The board members, many of whom had worked for years to develop even basic proficiency in foreign languages, were astounded by his linguistic abilities and cultural insights. Within his first month in the new role, Marcos proved Camilla's faith in him was well-founded. He successfully negotiated 3 major contracts with Middle Eastern partners, established relationships with key government officials in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and developed a comprehensive strategy for the company's expansion into North African markets. His success wasn't just due to his language skills. Marcos brought a unique perspective to international business that his more privileged colleagues lacked. Having experienced poverty and struggle, he understood markets and communities that corporate executives often overlooked. His ability to connect with people from all walks of life made him an exceptional negotiator and relationship builder. Marcos's story began to spread beyond the walls of the Velázquez mansion. Local news outlets picked up the story of the janitor who became a corporate executive overnight. The narrative resonated with people across the country who had faced similar struggles and harbored similar dreams. Universities began inviting Marcos to speak about his journey, and he used these opportunities to encourage students to never give up on their education, even when circumstances seemed impossible. He established a scholarship fund for students from low-income families who showed aptitude for languages and international business. His sister Sophia was able to focus entirely on her medical studies without worrying about financial constraints. His mother received the best cardiac care available, and for the first time in years, the Silva family could breathe easily, knowing that medical bills wouldn't destroy their future. But perhaps the most significant change was in Marcos himself. The confident intelligence that had been suppressed by years of survival mode began to flourish again. He started each day with purpose and excitement, knowing that his work was not just providing for his family, but potentially improving lives and building bridges between cultures. The business partnership with the Middle Eastern investors exceeded all expectations. Within 6 months, Velasquez Global Enterprises had secured contracts worth over $500 million in the region, and Marcos found himself managing a team of 50 employees across 5 countries. Camilla watched his success with a mixture of pride and amazement. She had built her career on making smart business decisions, but recognizing Marcos's potential was perhaps the smartest move she had ever made. More than that, it had opened her eyes to the importance of truly seeing the people around her, regardless of their position or circumstances. 1 year after that fateful phone call, Camilla hosted another important business meeting at her mansion. This time, the gathering included partners from across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, all eager to work with the company that had demonstrated such remarkable cultural competence and business acumen. Marcos, now impeccably dressed in tailored suits and fluent in 6 languages, moved through the gathering with natural ease. He switched seamlessly between Arabic, English, Spanish, French, Mandarin, and Portuguese as he engaged with different groups of international partners. Isabella, who still worked as head maid, watched from the kitchen doorway with a mixture of regret and amazement. She had been offered the opportunity to apologize to Marcos, but pride had prevented her from doing so. Now she saw him commanding respect from some of the world's most powerful business leaders, and she couldn't help but wonder how different things might have been if she had treated him with basic human dignity from the beginning. Roberto had actually approached Marcos a few months earlier to apologize for his behavior. To his surprise, Marcos had not only accepted the apology graciously, but had helped Roberto's son get a scholarship to study engineering. This act of kindness had profoundly impacted Roberto, who became one of Marcos's most loyal supporters in the household. During the evening's festivities, Abdullah al-Rashid stood to make a toast. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in English, then repeated in Arabic, "I want to tell you about the first time I met Marcos Silva. He was wearing the uniform of a janitor, but he spoke with the wisdom of a scholar and the insight of a true business leader. He reminded us all that talent and intelligence are not determined by circumstances, but by character and perseverance." He raised his glass toward Marcos. "In our culture, we have a saying, the true measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge. Marcos, you have shown us all what it means to rise above circumstances while never forgetting the lessons that struggle teaches us." The applause was thunderous. Marcos stood to respond, his voice steady and confident, yet still carrying the humility that had impressed everyone from the beginning. "A year ago, I answered a phone call in Arabic while mopping these very floors," he began, gesturing around the elegant room. "I thought I was about to lose my job. Instead, I found my calling. But I want everyone here to remember that the only thing that changed that day was opportunity. The knowledge, the skills, the determination. Those were always there. They were just waiting for someone to notice." He looked directly at Camilla. "Mrs. Velasquez didn't just give me a job. She gave me the chance to be who I was meant to be. But more importantly, she taught me that true leadership isn't about having power over others. It's about recognizing the power in others and helping them realize their potential." As the evening wound down and the international guests began to depart, many of them made it a point to speak personally with Marcos. They exchanged business cards, discussed future collaborations, and several offered him positions with their own companies, offers he politely declined, having found his place with Velasquez Global Enterprises. After the last guest had left, Camilla and Marcos sat in her office, reviewing the evening's successes. 3 new major contracts had been outlined, 2 joint ventures established, and a groundbreaking sustainable energy project had received full backing from a consortium of Middle Eastern investors. "You know," Camilla said, leaning back in her chair, "when I started this company, I thought success was about being the smartest person in the room. But you've taught me that real success comes from recognizing and nurturing the intelligence that's already there." Marcos smiled. "I learned something too. For years, I thought my value was determined by other people's recognition, but that phone call taught me that our worth isn't dependent on external validation. It's about being ready when opportunity presents itself." He paused, looking out at the city lights through the office windows. "I spent 2 years in this house, invisible to almost everyone, but I was never truly invisible. I was just waiting for the right moment to be seen. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Sophia, Marcos's sister, entered wearing her medical school white coat. She had just finished her shift at the hospital where she was completing her residency and had stopped by to congratulate her brother on another successful business event. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I wanted to thank you both before I forgot." She turned to Camila. "Mrs. Velasquez, I know you think you just gave Marcos a job, but you gave our entire family a future. Because of your decision to see past circumstances to potential, I'm now Dr. Silva, and next month I start my position as a cardiac surgeon at the Children's Hospital." Camila felt tears welling up in her eyes, an unusual occurrence for someone known for her composed demeanor. "Sophia, your success is entirely your own. Marcos and I just removed some obstacles." "That's exactly the point," Sophia replied. "Sometimes removing obstacles is the greatest gift you can give someone. It allows their true capabilities to shine through." Marcos's story began to inspire changes throughout Velasquez Global Enterprises. Camila instituted new policies requiring all managers to engage meaningfully with employees at every level of the organization. She established mentorship programs, educational assistance funds, and most importantly, regular opportunities for employees to showcase skills and talents that might not be apparent in their current roles. The company's Human Resources Department developed what became known as the Marcos Protocol, a comprehensive system for identifying and nurturing hidden talent within the organization. Several other companies began adopting similar approaches after seeing the remarkable results Velasquez Global Enterprises achieved. The mansion itself was transformed. The rigid hierarchy that had previously existed among the staff gave way to a more collaborative environment. Camila instituted regular meetings where all employees, regardless of their position, could share ideas and concerns. The change in atmosphere was remarkable. The house felt more like a home and less like a sterile showplace. Isabella eventually did apologize to Marcos, and while their relationship never became particularly warm, she gained a valuable lesson about treating all people with dignity. She began mentoring younger staff members, teaching them the importance of respect and professionalism, regardless of someone's position. Roberto's transformation was even more dramatic. Inspired by Marcos's kindness and Sophia's success, he enrolled in night classes to earn his GED and eventually began studying landscape architecture. Marcos, true to his generous nature, helped fund Roberto's education and eventually promoted him to head of grounds management with responsibility for landscaping projects at several of the company's international facilities. Patricia, the cook, was perhaps the most resistant to change, but even she couldn't ignore the new atmosphere in the household. She gradually became more respectful to all staff members and even began teaching cooking classes to local community groups, finding fulfillment in sharing her skills with others. 2 years after his promotion, Marcos was invited to speak at the International Conference for Cross-Cultural Business Development in Geneva. The conference brought together business leaders, cultural experts, and government officials from around the world to discuss best practices for international commerce. His presentation, titled "The Hidden Assets in Every Organization," received a standing ovation. He spoke about the importance of recognizing talent regardless of its packaging, the value of diverse perspectives in global business, and the transformative power of providing opportunities to those who have been overlooked. In every organization, he told the audience of hundreds of executives and diplomats, there are people whose potential far exceeds their current circumstances. The question is not whether that potential exists, but whether leadership has the vision to recognize it and the courage to act on it. He shared his own story, but more importantly, he challenged the audience to examine their own organizations for overlooked talent. How many brilliant minds are cleaning your offices? How many innovative thinkers are answering your phones? How many future leaders are currently in positions that don't reflect their capabilities? The speech was recorded and shared widely on social media and business platforms. It sparked conversations in boardrooms around the world about talent recognition and opportunity creation. Several universities began incorporating Marcos's story into their business school curricula as a case study in human resource management and leadership development. 3 years into his role as Director of Middle Eastern Operations, Marcos faced his greatest professional challenge. Political tensions in the region threatened to derail several major projects, and competitors were attempting to poach Velasquez Global Enterprises' key partners by claiming the company lacked authentic understanding of Middle Eastern culture and politics. The crisis came to a head when one of their most important partners, Abdullah al-Rashid, was arrested on what appeared to be politically motivated charges. The arrest sent shockwaves through the business community, and several companies immediately distanced themselves from al-Rashid's organization to avoid potential complications. Camilla called an emergency board meeting to decide how to respond. Several board members advocated for cutting ties with al-Rashid's company to protect Velasquez Global Enterprises from potential backlash. The legal department recommended suspending all contracts until the situation was resolved. Marcos disagreed. Abdullah al-Rashid is not just our business partner, he argued passionately in the boardroom. He's become our friend. In Arab culture, loyalty during difficult times is more valuable than profit during good times. If we abandon him now, we'll lose not just his business, but the respect of every partner we have in the region. He proposed an alternative strategy. Instead of distancing themselves from al-Rashid, he suggested that Velasquez Global Enterprises should publicly express confidence in his integrity while working behind the scenes to understand the true nature of the charges against him. The board was split. Some members worried about the financial and reputational risks of standing by someone who might be involved in criminal activity. Others were concerned about the implications of abandoning a partner without clear evidence of wrongdoing. Camilla looked around the room, then at Marcos. You know the culture better than anyone here. What do you truly believe is the right thing to do? I believe Abdullah is innocent, Marcos said firmly. But more than that, I believe that our response to this crisis will define our company's character for years to come. We can choose to be the kind of organization that stands by its principles and protects its relationships, or we can be the kind that runs at the first sign of trouble. The decision to stand by al-Rashid was controversial and risky. Several investors expressed concern, and the company's stock price fluctuated as markets reacted to the uncertainty. But Marcos worked tirelessly, using his cultural knowledge and relationships to navigate the complex political situation. He flew to the Middle East and spent weeks meeting with government officials, business leaders, and journalists to understand the real story behind al-Rashid's arrest. What he discovered was a complex web of political maneuvering and business competition that had little to do with actual criminal activity. Through careful diplomacy and strategic communication, Marcos helped orchestrate a campaign that eventually led to al-Rashid's release and the dropping of all charges. The vindication was complete, and the loyalty shown by Velasquez Global Enterprises during the crisis cemented their reputation as trustworthy partners throughout the region. The aftermath was extraordinary. Business leaders across the Middle East and North Africa saw how Velasquez Global Enterprises had handled the crisis, and many specifically requested to work with the company because of the integrity they had demonstrated. Within 6 months, the company's Middle Eastern operations had grown by 300%, and Marcos was promoted to Vice President of International Operations. 5 years after answering that phone call in Arabic, Marcos found himself back in the hallway where his transformation had begun. The mansion was being prepared for another important gathering, this time a celebration of Velasquez Global Enterprises' recognition as International Company of the Year by the Global Business Ethics Council. As he walked through the familiar corridors, now wearing a tailored Italian suit and carrying himself with the confidence of a successful executive, Marcos reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The marble floors still gleamed just as brightly, but his perspective on everything else had changed completely. The celebration that evening was attended by dignitaries from around the world, including several heads of state and the CEOs of major international corporations. Marcos moved through the crowd with ease, switching between languages as he engaged with different groups of guests. He was no longer the invisible janitor. He was one of the most respected figures in international business. During the formal ceremony, Camilla was presented with the award for outstanding leadership in global business ethics. In her acceptance speech, she told the story of how she had discovered one of her most valuable executives. 5 years ago, she said to the assembled crowd, I learned one of the most important lessons of my career. I learned that talent, intelligence, and character are not determined by circumstance, but revealed by opportunity. In my own home, I had overlooked one of the most gifted individuals I had ever encountered simply because I was looking at his position rather than his potential. She gestured toward Marcos, who was standing near the front of the room. Marcos Silva taught me that true leadership is not about having all the answers yourself, but about recognizing the answers that already exist in the people around you. He also taught me that success without character is meaningless, and that the greatest achievements come from lifting others up rather than climbing over them. The applause was extended and heartfelt. Many in the audience knew Marcos's story, and it had become something of a legend in international business circles. Proof that talent could emerge from the most unexpected places when given the right opportunity. When it came time for Marcos to address the gathering, he spoke with the eloquence and wisdom that had first impressed Abdullah al-Rashid years earlier. But his message was not about his own success. It was about the responsibility that comes with recognition and opportunity. "Tonight we celebrate achievement and success," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "But I want to challenge everyone here to remember that success is not a destination. It's a responsibility. Each of us has the power to recognize potential in others, to provide opportunities for growth, and to create environments where talent can flourish regardless of its current circumstances." He paused, looking around the room at the assembled business leaders and dignitaries. 5 years ago, I was cleaning these floors and dreaming of a better future. Tonight I stand before you as proof that dreams combined with opportunity can create extraordinary results. But the real measure of our success will not be what we achieve for ourselves, but what we make possible for others. Today, 10 years after that transformative phone call, Marcos Silva serves as CEO of Velasquez Global Enterprises Middle East and Africa Division, overseeing operations in 23 countries and managing a workforce of over 15,000 employees. The division has become the most profitable segment of the company, generating over $2 billion in annual revenue. But perhaps more importantly, Marcos has never forgotten the lessons learned during his time as a janitor. His office, located on the top floor of the company's headquarters in Dubai, features a simple mop hanging on the wall, a reminder of where his journey began and the importance of humility in leadership. The Marcos Silva Institute for Hidden Talent Recognition has been established at universities in 12 countries, providing scholarships and mentorship programs for students from disadvantaged backgrounds who show exceptional potential in languages, international business, and cross-cultural communication. The Institute has helped over 3,000 students achieve their educational goals and has become a model for talent development programs worldwide. Camila Velasquez, now in her mid-50s, often reflects on how that single moment of truly seeing someone changed not just Marcos's life, but her own understanding of leadership. She has written a best-selling book titled The Power of Invisible Potential, which has become required reading in business schools around the world. The book's dedication reads simply, "To Marcos, who taught me that the greatest discoveries are often hiding in plain sight." The original mansion where Marcos's transformation began has been converted into a training center for international business professionals. The hallway where he answered that fateful phone call now features a plaque that reads, "In this space on a Tuesday morning in 2025, a phone call in Arabic changed 2 lives and reminded us all that talent recognizes no boundaries of circumstance." Isabella, Roberto, and Patricia all attended the mansion's rededication ceremony. Isabella, now retired, spoke about how witnessing Marcos's transformation had taught her to treat every person with dignity and respect. Roberto, who earned his landscape architecture degree and now manages green spaces for the company's international offices, credits Marcos with showing him that education and growth are possible at any stage of life. Even Patricia, though she remained somewhat reserved, acknowledged that the experience had made her more aware of how she treated others. Sofia Silva Martinez, now Dr. Sofia Silva Martinez, heads the pediatric cardiac surgery department at the largest children's hospital in South America. She has saved hundreds of young lives and credits her brother's sacrifice and eventual success with making her career possible. She often tells her medical students about the importance of perseverance and the power of family support in achieving seemingly impossible dreams. The Silva family's mother, Maria, lived to see both of her children achieve their dreams. She passed away peacefully at the age of 72, surrounded by her successful children and knowing that the sacrifices their father had made and the struggles they had all endured had ultimately led to a legacy of achievement and service to others. Ahmed, the friend whose phone call started it all, became Marcos's business partner in a consulting firm that specializes in helping companies identify and develop hidden talent within their organizations. Their firm, Silva Hassan International Talent Solutions, works with corporations worldwide to implement systems for recognizing and nurturing overlooked potential. The Middle Eastern business partners who first recognized Marcos's abilities have remained close friends and collaborators. Abdullah al-Rashid, now in his 70s, often introduces Marcos at business conferences as the man who proved that wisdom and talent are not confined by circumstances. Their partnership has grown into a multi-billion-dollar alliance that has created jobs and opportunities across 3 continents. But perhaps the most meaningful aspect of Marcos's legacy is the countless individuals who have been inspired by his story to pursue their own dreams despite difficult circumstances. Letters arrive daily at his office from people around the world who have been motivated to continue their education, learn new languages, or persist in the face of adversity because they heard about a janitor who answered a phone call in Arabic. One such letter came from a young woman named Fatima in Morocco, who was working as a cleaner in a hotel while studying computer programming at night. She wrote, "Mr. Silva, your story gave me hope when I wanted to give up. Today, I received a job offer from a major technology company. I want you to know that somewhere in Casablanca, there's a former cleaning lady who's now going to be a software engineer, and she owes part of her success to your example." Another letter came from a security guard in London named David, who had been using his night shifts to study international law. He wrote, "I heard your speech online, and it reminded me that my current job doesn't define my potential. Last week, I was accepted to Oxford University's graduate program in international relations. Your story taught me that preparation meets opportunity, and I was determined to be prepared when my opportunity came." These stories multiply across continents and cultures, creating a ripple effect of inspiration and achievement that extends far beyond anything Marcos could have imagined when he first answered that phone call. As Marcos often tells audiences around the world, his story is not unique because of its extraordinary transformation, but because of its universal truth. Every person possesses untapped potential that awaits the right moment and the right opportunity to emerge. The difference between success and unfulfilled potential, he explains in his speeches, is not talent, intelligence, or even hard work, though all of these matter. The difference is recognition. Someone must be willing to see beyond circumstances to possibility, beyond current reality to future potential. He always concludes his presentations with the same challenge. Look around you tomorrow. In your office, your school, your community, there are people whose talents are hidden beneath their circumstances. The question is not whether that talent exists. It always does. The question is whether you have the vision to see it and the courage to act on what you see. The story of Marcos Silva serves as a powerful reminder that transformative moments often come disguised as ordinary occurrences. A phone call answered in a hallway. A language spoken fluently by someone whose intellect had been overlooked. A business leader willing to look beyond appearances to potential. In a world where people are often judged by their current circumstances rather than their inherent capabilities, Marcos's journey from janitor to CEO stands as proof that talent knows no social boundaries, intelligence recognizes no economic limitations, and potential exists in every person, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The marble floors of the Velázquez mansion still gleam under crystal chandeliers, but they now reflect a different truth. That the most valuable treasures in any organization are not the assets that appear on balance sheets, but the untapped potential that walks through the doors every day, sometimes carrying a mop, sometimes speaking languages that reveal depths of knowledge and capability that no one took the time to discover. And somewhere in the world, at this very moment, there's another person whose phone might ring, whose talents might be accidentally revealed, whose life might be transformed by someone willing to see beyond the surface to the extraordinary potential that lies beneath. The question is, will you be ready to recognize it when it appears?